Hi everyone, it's John from RFM Calc, and today I'm talking about Wix. So Wix is a software as a service website creation platform, originally founded in Israel in 2006. It's grown massively since then into one of the most popular web creation platforms in the world. It currently has over 200 million users, according to the site, and turnover in 2021 was in excess of $1.3 billion. So a very sizable platform and very popular. E-commerce is now a key part of the platform as well. So originally it was very much a simple way for creating a static brochure website, but they added e-commerce functionality fairly on in the journey, I think around 2012, 2013. And that's obviously now a key part of the makeup. Pricing wise, it's pitched certainly cheaper than Shopify, I would say. So you've got your website plans here, which start at £3.50 a month. They don't include any e-commerce functionality. So if you want that, you can go for one of the e-commerce plans. But even the most expensive plan at £22 a month is significantly cheaper than Shopify's cheapest plan. So it's pitched really at that entry level, kind of alongside platforms like Squarespace. So as you'd expect, it doesn't come with quite as much functionality and potential as a platform like Shopify, but it is still quite an impressive platform for the price, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. What I've had to do is sign up for the Business Unlimited plan, so you can actually do quite a lot for free on Wix. You can create your store, you can add products, but you can't actually take orders, which is what I needed to do today to demonstrate how Wix works. So I've signed up for the Business Unlimited plan. It is worth noting that once you signed up for a free plan, Wix will send you a few 50% off offers, kind of on an automated process. So if you are interested, certainly in taking out, for example, a yearly plan on the e-commerce side, sign up for the free plan and just wait a couple of days and you'll get a 50% offer. That's just for yearly. That doesn't apply to the monthly plans if you hold off upgrading for a little bit. So, of course, like any good platform, Wix does integrate with RFM Calc, no problem. So today I'm going to talk about Wix as a platform. We're going to have a nice kind of run through of the admin functionality. You know, Wix does get I suppose a bit of stick from people in the e-commerce space in terms of how it works and functionality wise, but actually when we dive in today, we'll see it's quite an impressive platform in terms of what it can offer, and certainly in terms of ease of use. So we'll talk through all that today. We'll then go through how to export orders from Wix as a CSV file, which is possible absolutely natively in the platform, which is great. And finally, we'll talk about how to upload that CSV file into RFM Calc to allow us to generate all the advanced e-commerce reporting, things like customer lifetime value, average time between orders, customer cohort analysis, RFM segmentation, all the kind of advanced reports that obviously you won't get with a platform like Wix. In fact, you don't get with really any e-commerce platform out of the box. So we'll talk about how to do that as well. So first of all, let's have a look at my Wix admin dashboard. So this is the admin dashboard area when you enter your store. So as I say, I've signed up for the Business Unlimited plan just for the purposes of doing this demo. So you can see you've got a bit of an overview here in terms of unfulfilled orders, latest blog posts as well, even though I've not added any. These are kind of built in as standard just to give you a demonstration. You've also got your analytics here as well. And then various other kind of bits tied in as well in terms of active contacts, latest email campaigns if you sent any of those. So just a nice kind of standard overview. Just to work through the various areas, I'll start with products. So products are actually really quite simple to manage, and it's actually been done in quite a nice way. So adding a product is pretty straightforward. So you've got the option for kind of digital or physical. If I just go to physical, you've got all your nice options here. So I created this category called top stuff. You can add your images, your product info. You can have a ribbon, which is like a little swatch on the image, just to highlight if it's new, for example, or sale. You can add their description. You've got price as well, and a sale kind of price option as well if you want to show that. One thing I really like is product options. So adding variants is really a good test of how simple an e-commerce platform is to use, and Wix handles this pretty well. So all you have to do, if I wanted to add an option for say size, or let's say weight, because that's the one I've not got so far, we can do light, medium. I'm just comma separating these, and heavy. Add that. They're there now, and then I can just click that to manage the options, and straight away I've not had to save the product, I've not had to go to another screen and create an attribute. Straight away I can add my different prices, my SKU and so on, and quantity, or at least the status, in stock, out of stock, and weight and so on for each variant. So straight away I've not had to save the product first. You've got the track inventory option as well, so you can add an inventory if you want. Nice and simple, and that's really, really intuitive. That's probably one of the easiest e-commerce platforms in that regard in terms of adding variants. Some e-commerce platforms, this is horrendously difficult. You've got to go all over the place, create attributes somewhere else, come back, save the product first before you can create variants. Whereas Wix makes it really, really simple. And this is something I think that's really a key indicator of how easy an e-commerce platform is to use, is how easy it is to create product variants. And I've got to say, Wix, it's really, really easy. You've then got quite a few other options as well. I mean, there's definitely not as many options as some platforms, but what there is there is presented really nicely. It's really intuitive. It's really simple to use, which is pretty impressive. Then if I go to collections, so collections is basically categories. So some sites, I think Shopify might call them collections as well, actually, from memory. But basically, this is your product categories you might be more familiar with in terms of terminology. So I've created this category called Top Stuff. So you can come in here, you can change the name, you can change the image, and it's nice and kind of straightforward. Again, not a huge number of options, but nice and easy and intuitive. And one thing you can do as well is merchandise the product, so you can change the order really, really easily. So if I want to use, move this banana to the top of the category, that's dead easy, just drag and drop. So again, that's quite a nice indicator of how easy a platform is to use. Some platforms make this very difficult to merchandise products. You have to go to the product record and enter a number. Some platforms make it nice and easy like this with a drag and drop interface. So again, that's a pretty good indicator of how intuitive an e-commerce platform is. And with Wix, changing the order and merchandising products within a category is really, really easy. You've then got some other kind of interesting options. So back in stock requests, out of the box, customers can add an email to request a notification when an item is back in stock. And then, there's other functionality as well, but it's kind of, I suppose, kind of basic in terms of what the offering is, which is what you'd expect. It's a low-end platform, but what is here is really easy to use, really intuitive. And I think that's, pretty impressive, and kudos to Wix for doing that. Orders I'll come back to, just to say here. So we've got the order screen, which takes a little while to load. So I've put through all these test orders. I'll come back to this section in a sec. You then got gift card options, blog subscriptions out of the box as well. And then if we come down here, I also wanted to look at kind of marketing and SEO. So you've got a few options here within the marketing section. That you could do. You can actually do a fair bit here in terms of tools. So SEO kind of, they call it SEO whiz, but a bit of option SEO functionality there to help you kind of optimize your site. You can then advertise on Facebook, create email campaigns, and so on. So there's quite a lot you could do. You've got, like I say, the email marketing there, and I'm not going to run through all these options, but there's a few kind of different options here. Obviously, you've got your coupons as well that you can add. Analytics and reports, just to kind of touch on this briefly. So Wix does provide a few reports out of the box in terms of traffic and sales. Not a massive amount of information, obviously not the level of reporting you get with RFM Calc, because no e-commerce platform provides that, but you can see quite a reasonable amount of data here in the reporting section. And then in finances, you've got things like payments and so on that have been received by the store. As you can see, all the test orders I've put through with a manual payment gateway, an offline payment gateway. So that's really useful for testing as well. Some e-commerce platforms, particularly at the lower end, I think Squarespace is one, don't let you use an offline payment method like cash on delivery for kind of testing. You have to kind of connect to live payment gateway, which is really frustrating when you just want to test or record a video showing how it works. So that's really useful as well. So just kind of looking at the settings, I'll come back to channels in a second, but you can see you've got your overall settings here as well. In terms of payments, you've got a few options. So you can see I've got my manual payment option to allow customers to pay offline. You've then got credit and debit cards via Wix. So obviously Wix kind of push you to use their service, which is fair enough. It's the Wix platform. If they want you to use their card, gateway, you can understand that. You've also got PayPal, up front as standard. But there are more payment options if you click that little link at the bottom. So you've got various integrations. You've got Klarna, got quite a few as well. And then if you go even further to third-party credit debit card providers, you then get people like Stripe and Square, WorldPay, and so on, Braintree. So it's interesting how they've positioned this. Obviously, they're pushing their credit and debit card gateway up front, which you could understand. But there are actually quite a few gateway options once you've kind of clicked through a little bit to find them. So they are there, just maybe hidden away, and I think purposely hidden away. Whereas in certain platforms, they're much more closely connected with Stripe, for example, and Stripe would be right up front. Here, it's literally 2 clicks away to see Stripe as a payment gateway option, which is interesting but understandable. The next thing I wanted to look at is actually how to change the look of the store, because this is really important. And I think it's really key when you're looking at these lower end e-commerce platforms as well. Customers really like to be able to customize the store easily. Obviously, you don't have access to the code or the CSS and so on, so you need to be able to do it through the platform. So if I go to the website here, you can see you've got this blue link here to edit the site. This will open the editor. Now this does take a little while to load normally, so I'll just wait patiently. You've got this nice loading icon in the meantime. Kind of meaningless, but interesting, I suppose. Oh, come on, here we go. It's being extra slow today. There we go. So this is my site, which I've created. So there's obviously different kind of base themes and so on that you can switch between. But then actually editing the site is pretty easy. So you can see this obviously carries over from the main system for brochure websites that they've obviously Wix was built on originally, and that same functionality is naturally available on the e-commerce side as well. So you can see here to change this text, for example, I could just click edit text. And I can just delete and just put new text here. And save that. And there you go, simple as that. I've now changed the text there. If I want to change the strip, if I go to change strip background. So I've got an image there that I like, but maybe I just want to kind of change it slightly. So if I click on color, you can do a color, but actually if I go for an image again, which is what I wanted to do, settings is actually what I want to demonstrate this. Excuse me. There we go. So you can see you've got this adjustment option here. So what this will do is it'll load the image I've just selected in a second. And I can do things like I can make it more bright. You can do more color saturation like that. So you can see there's quite a lot of options here, quite a few filters and so on. You can crop and resize, you can add text and overlays. But if I just save that, basically what that's done now is saved a version of this banner for me, but with my kind of settings applied. So if I go to image here, if I go to my site files, you can see that's the one I've just edited and that it's saved there, which I'm then able to use. So it kind of just creates another, which is a very sensible way to do it. So you take the base image and it creates an edited version for you and saves it in your files, which you can then use. But it's pretty powerful to be able to do all that from the editor. I mean, a lot of e-commerce platforms don't offer that level of functionality. There's obviously a lot you can do. Even adjusting the categories within the navigation is really easy as well. Drag and drop kind of interface. You can move the links around. You can move your content pages around. It's really, really straightforward. There's quite a lot really you can do, like I say, and obviously you can change all kinds of things from the editor here. So I just wanted to touch on that. You can then, of course, kind of view it on mobile as well in here to see how it looks on mobile and edit that as well. So I think the key thing really to note here is there are a lot of options and it will take a little bit of getting used to, I think, just to fully understand how to edit your site. But it is a very, very powerful editor, and this is naturally a core part of the Wix platform. But that's what you get included, of course, as well with your e-commerce store. You get that power and that functionality and that ease of use to be able to change the look of your store and really change any element pretty easily from this editor system. Cool. So that's just a little overview of how Wix works on the admin side. I think how I summarise is that it's really quite an impressive platform in terms of ease of use, in terms of intuitiveness. I found it quite impressive, and I was pleasantly surprised actually, because I was expecting it to be probably not as good as it actually is. There's obviously limitations. There's a lot of things you can't do that you can do on more advanced e-commerce platforms, and that's understandable and that's fine. Like I say, this is pitched at a very low end in terms of the pricing. But what is here is very easy to use and intuitive. So now let me just go back to the order screen. So this is the order screen that I mentioned before. I think like the rest of the site, it's really pretty intuitive to use. So in terms of updating the status of an order, for example, you can see Neil Godwin has an order here where he's not paid yet. So if I just click that, I can mark as paid. And job's done, you see, nice and easy, doesn't need to reload the page, order's marked as paid. You can click into any item, or any order I should say, to view the details. So if I click in here for this order by David Brent, obviously going to Slough Trading Estate, you can see what he's ordered, you can see any notes on the order. So again, there's not a massive number of options here, but you can see basically all the key information that you need. You've also got the option here to issue a refund. You can send the shipping confirmation email when you've shipped it and so on. You can create an invoice. So, it's not extensive in terms of the functionality that is available, but again, just to stress, and I know I'm repeating myself here, what is here is nicely laid out and easy to use. So, obviously, in order to get all these orders into RFM Calc, we're going to need to export them. So there isn't actually an export option visible when you first land on this page, but all you need to do is if you select all the orders, you can then see you've got this nice export link here. You've then got a couple of options, so you can export either just the orders or you can export the orders with the items as well. So what I'll do is I'll just export the orders for the purposes of this, and that's all we need in RFM Calc. We don't really worry about the product data. We're really focused on that key order data and that overall revenue and figures based on that. But what I will do is I'll take you through both files and the differences between them in a second. So to export the orders, we just click orders. You've got the option here to customize which columns you want to select, select and export. So you've got kind of billing name and so on. So you can go through, and if there's any you don't want, you can really customize this. It's not super advanced, so you can't pick a date range. You also can't pick things like saving a template. So for example, if you wanted to save certain columns as a template and come back and next time select that template for export, you can't do that either. So it's kind of basic, but it does, in fairness, it has more options than a lot of e-commerce platforms, but perhaps not as many as some in terms of the export, but everything we need for RFM Calc. So then we just click the export button here. That pushes the file straight to the browser, which we can save. And that's it. Now we have our CSV. So now that we've downloaded that, let's have a quick look what it looks like. So this is the orders CSV that I've just exported. What I've done is I've saved it in Excel just so I can spread out the columns a bit to make it a bit more readable. I think the first thing to know in terms of the architecture of the file is that the orders run newest to oldest. So different e-commerce platforms do this in different ways. Some will export oldest to newest, some Shopify, for example, and obviously Wix will export newest to oldest. RFM Calc doesn't care. Both options are fine. So you can see you've got your order number here, you've got your order date in a nice kind of clear readable format. So that's kind of universal in terms of interpretation, depending on where you are in the world. So whether you're in the US or the UK or anywhere in Europe, kind of that kind of date format is very clear and easy to interpret, so you can understand why Wix have gone for that. You've then got the total order quantity in terms of how many items are on the order. You've got the contact email, which is the main contact email for the customer. If we scroll across, we've then got the, basically they call it recipients, but this is effectively the delivery information. So it maybe would have been better to label these with delivery, but you've got recipient name, recipient phone number, recipient company name. You can see that certain fields have speech marks around them, so that suggests to me that perhaps the CSV isn't quite formatted as it should be by Wix when it exports it. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt there, but it does feel like maybe there's an extra speech mark or two creeping in there, which is kind of causing Excel to put them in. We'll then scroll across. You've got the delivery address, delivery postcode, and so on, again with the extra speech marks. We've then got the billing name and billing phone number, and basically all those details repeated for the billing address. So normally you'd expect these to be the same. I did do one test order where, which one was it? It was this one for Tim Canterbury. Where I did a different delivery a different delivery and billing address, and you can see they've come through fine. So the address is different there, 842 Yeovil Road versus 140 Lowestoft Drive. What will happen is, even if the billing address is the same as the delivery address, sorry, the billing address is over here, is the same as the delivery address over here, Wix will still repeat it, which is pretty standard. And that's a positive. That's how most e-commerce platforms work. Obviously, it's more difficult if you have to add logic to say, okay, if the delivery address is blank, use the billing address. So it makes sense just to kind of always populate the delivery address, and Wix does that. You then got the kind of things like the payment status, the payment method. You've got the total here in terms of the order total and the tax amount as well. So Wix will calculate all that for you. You've got the fulfillment status. And finally, you've got this shipping label field, which kind of has all the information that you typically need to generate a shipping label, which is why Wix includes that in its standard export. So not a massive amount of information, but all the basics that you need, and obviously everything we need for RFM Calc. So before we go on to kind of how to import this file, I just wanted to show the products version as well. So you remember when I exported, there was an option to export with the products too. So this is basically exactly the same in terms of how the file exports. All it does is export in a multi-line per order format. So you can see certain order numbers here are duplicated more than once. So 10003 and 10002 have multiple lines, and that's because on these orders the customer ordered more than one item. So if I pick line 6, for example, you can see we've got basically the product is included here on the first line, but then you've got a subsequent line for the same order with the other product that they ordered. So in terms of the architecture, sometimes e-commerce platforms will export the top order line, and then the products will be on the subsequent lines, but you won't have any product information on that first line. Sometimes also e-commerce platforms will export the key order data on that top line, but not repeat it on the product line. Wix kind of goes for the safe option, whereby the first order line includes the product data, includes one piece of product information, and then every line has basically all the fields. So every line has the shipping address, every line has the billing address, every line has all these fields duplicated. Which is fine. I mean, that's nice and safe, nice logical kind of safe way to do it. You are duplicating a lot of information, so if you're concerned for any reason about having a massive CSV file from Wix, that's something to be aware of, because there is a lot of duplicated information in there that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So you could, for example, just not duplicate the delivery and billing information for just the subsequent product only lines. But that's fine. It's a nice, safe way to do it from Wix, and that'll work fine. I should say, even though we're going to demonstrate today with just the order version from Wix, you could import this version into RFM Calc as well. Absolutely no problem. So RFM Calc can handle multi-line files. Certain e-commerce platforms only export in this format with multi-line per order files, with the products listed. There isn't an option not to do that, so that's absolutely fine. RFM Calc would handle this file no problem, but for the purposes of today, what I'm going to import is the original CSV file with just the orders, which is this file here. So now that we understand the file, let's create a project in RFM Calc and set up our report. So now I'm in my RFM Calc account. I'm just going to create a new project. So we'll call it test Wix. In terms of the project currency, GBP is fine. That's what my Wix store is set up in. In terms of interpreting the order date, so you'll remember that the order date is in a nice kind of clear format with the shortened name of the month, and then the date and then the year. So the default interpretation is absolutely fine for that. As I mentioned, Wix exports orders newest to oldest, but the auto detect again is fine. It uses a proper comma delimiter, and so you do have more options here in RFM Calc if your file's exported in a different format with a different delimiter for some reason, but comma is obviously the most common, and then that's it. So I've now got my project. We'll just go in and schedule our report. So all I need to do is select the raw CSV file that I downloaded from Wix, And then we've just got to map the columns. So order ID is order number. Order date is date. So Wix, interestingly, and it's the only e-commerce platform I've seen that does this, does put the time in a separate column. So that's not massively important because what Wix will do is export the orders in order. So even if a customer places 2 orders on the same day, we'll know which order they place first by virtue of the fact that it comes first in the file, or second, depending on when we flip the file around and it's running oldest to newest. So that's absolutely fine, but it is interesting that Wix uses a separate column for time. But like I say, not a problem for RFM Calc. Currency code we don't need. Order value, you've got a couple of options here. So I always like to use the complete order value that the customer's paid, so the total they've paid, which is called total. There is a separate one for tax as well. There isn't actually a subtotal excluding tax, which is interesting. So you'd have to manually kind of add another column yourself, which you can also do before you upload. But we'll go for total. I did just notice as well, there is a currency column. So like I say, all my orders are in GBP and pounds, but we can include the currency column anyway. All the currency column is used for is if you do accept orders in multiple currencies, what RFM Calc will do, and this is really clever, is it'll convert orders in other currencies to your base project currency to your base project currency at the prevailing exchange rate when the report is run. And so that allows you to get a really accurate picture for overall lifetime value and so on, and all those value metrics based on your base project currency. So that's a really cool feature, but obviously all my orders are in GBP, so it's not going to apply here. In terms of order status, so again, you've got a couple of options you can use here. I think probably the best one is maybe fulfillment status. You've got payment status. You've also got fulfillment status. So I'm going to go for fulfillment status. It doesn't really matter. It's not essential. All this is used for really is basically when we generate the report, you can exclude certain statuses from that report. So I've got fulfillment status here. If I wanted to exclude unfulfilled orders, I could add unfulfilled here to the status exclusion list. You can comma separate a list of values here. There's obviously help for all these fields if you forget that. So all that means is rather than having to kind of manually remove those orders from your CSV before you upload them, we can filter them out for you. I'll select the customer ID. So contact email is really the best value to use here. It is for most e-commerce platforms. So Wix doesn't have an internal customer ID value anyway that you could pass, but email is generally the best value to use for this. So that's in effect a unique identifier for that customer. So when they come back and use the same email, they'll be treated as a repeat customer. You can also exclude certain customer IDs in the same way as you can exclude certain order statuses if you want to. So for example, if you have internal test orders from staff, you can exclude their customer IDs here in a comma separated list. You can also be really clever and kind of wildcard certain options as well. So you can exclude all email IDs from your domain as well. So there's quite powerful features here if you want to exclude certain customers from the reports. And then in terms of the customer email column, we'll just use the contact email again. There we go. And then we do actually have a phone number as well. So I'll go for recipient phone number. And then for first name, we'll go for recipient name. So Wix doesn't split first name and surname into separate columns. Some e-commerce platforms do, some don't. For RFM Calc, it really doesn't matter. All you have to do is set the name as the first name column and then just ignore the last name column. And again, there's context help here to remind you of that if you need that. And then finally, for the customer company, I think we don't have a column for that. No, there's no company column in Wix, which is fine. So if these fields aren't essential, all this is used for is in certain parts of the report, we'll pull through real customer information. For example, your 10 best customers or your 10 biggest spending customers who haven't purchased in the last 6 months. We'll pull through some interesting tables like that, as well as generating a full customer CSV with your customers individually listed and all their key order metrics, things like lifetime value, their RFM segments and so on. So all that's used for is, all this information I should say is used for is that data. But if you don't need to set it, and if you don't set it, it won't affect any of the numeric data in the report. So it's purely optional, but it can give a lot more context and some interesting data for parts of the report. Finally, if your account plan supports it, you'll have some custom column options here which you can add. So one of the most common ones to use is payment gateway. So if I scroll all the way over here, where has it gone? There we are, payment method. So obviously all mine have been placed with offline orders, but if you have different payment methods, what we'll do then is generate reports around that. So lifetime value based on payment method, average time to the second order based on payment method, and things like that. So you can get some really cool additional reports based on these custom columns. You can, of course, and this applies to any e-commerce platform, add additional columns yourself to the CSV before you upload it, and that's a really powerful feature as well. So you could create an extra column here, do some custom data based on some Excel formulas, for example, and then we can create custom reports around that custom column. So that's a really powerful feature as well. Obviously, I'm on the huge plan here, so I can add up to 10. How many you can add varies on your account plan, but you can see that on our pricing page. Whew! And then that's pretty much it. So we'll call this test Wix 1. And you've got the option here to anonymize customer data. So if you don't want any real names and emails appearing in the report, you can anonymize that here. And that won't affect, again, any of the numeric data. But sometimes people like to do that just to keep that anonymity for customer data that's appearing in the report. And then finally, you've got the option here to overwrite the default project column mappings. So all that will do is, against this project, it will save all these mappings that we've selected here for kind of order number, order date, and so on. So next time I schedule a report against this project, I won't have to do that again, which obviously saves a bit of time. And that's it. My report is now scheduled, and in a couple of minutes, I'll get an email to say that's been generated, and I can have a look at all the fantastic reporting data. So that's pretty much everything, I think. So just to kind of recap, today we've talked about Wix as a platform. I've been through and given a little admin demo of the key functionality that Wix provides and how it works. We've then shown how to export orders from Wix as a CSV file, which is really easy and natively built into Wix. We've then taken a deep dive into that CSV file to understand the structure and how the file's formatted and the columns it contains. We've also taken a look at the difference between just exporting orders and exporting orders with products to make that really clear as well. And then finally, we've come back to RFM Calc, we created a new project and scheduled a report. So hopefully that's been useful. Really appreciate you watching and your time. Much appreciated. Obviously, if you've any questions about this, feel free to visit rfmcalc.com and drop us a line. But if not, I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, everyone.